pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there agendas up on the thing too? Did you notice?
Yeah. At this time, I will conduct a roll call. Director Yuhan. Here. Director Tamaro. Here. Director Sorkin. Here. Director Addy. Here. Director Schoberg. Here. Director Anderson. Here. Director Reardon.
Present. Director
Lotiger. Here. And Director Sundquist. All members are present. At this time, I will ask if any of the members of the board have a motion to either approve or amend the agenda.
I move that we delete 10 and 11, 10.0 and 11.0.
Is there support? Is there support? Is there support? Motion fails for lack of support.
I move that 10.0 be an open meeting at my request, because I am the subject of the closed meeting.
I don't think we need a motion on that. I think you can just ask that it be made public, and we will not go into closed session at that time. So agenda item 11 will be an open session pursuant to request.
Agenda item 10.
Oh, sorry, agenda item 10. That's correct. Thank you.
Excuse me, we can't hear back here.
Okay, I'm speaking as loudly as I can, but we'll try to speak up.
I can't hear anything.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Yes. So is there motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Support.
Motion by Director Schoberg, support by Director Addy. Any discussion?
Discussion is that I believe I have a right for legal representation, and it's not afforded here, and there has not been time for legal representation for 10.0. That's my input, that I believe I'm entitled to legal representation.
You are not entitled to legal representation, and we will move on at this time. All those in favor?
Can you cite why I'm not entitled to legal representation?
It's not a due process hearing.
But I may want to have legal counsel with me.
Board book was published on Thursday or Friday. You had time to consult. It's not a due process hearing, thus you are not entitled to legal representation. And if you've got anything to cite otherwise, we should have discussed it before today, and we're not going to discuss it now.
I have, according to our policy, all of our board books and supporting material is supposed to be delivered to board members 3 days in advance. On Saturday, I received an email from Noel Schmidt on a resolution about the closed meeting. I'm censuring myself. I didn't get it until today because I didn't check my email until today.
Notice is completed upon delivery, and this is not a due process. You're not being deprived of anything.
I still got it on Saturday, and that is not 3 days before the meeting. So noted.
It was delivered. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carries 9 to 1? 8 to 1. Yep. As far as the recognition of visitors and visitor input, there was some requests to speak that were filled out, but they were not related to board agenda items, and there will be no visitor input recognized at this time. As far as the consent agenda, I am moving to amend and pull agenda item 4.14 and would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I have another poll for discussion. 4.14 on the consent agenda?
It's related to a lane change.
4.1 and 4.1 and 4.4?
4.14. And you wanted to pull 4.1?
There's only 4.
On the back.
There's not one 4.14, there's 4.1 and 4.4.
4.1 is the...
On the back page, there's
4.14.
4.1414 is on the back page.
Is this an addition to the agenda we got in the board packet?
No?
It's on mine.
Oh, 4.14, okay, I got you. I stand corrected. And I would like to consider item 4.2 and item 4.4.
Is there a motion to amend the consent agenda as noted?
You don't need a motion. I just want to pull for discussion.
Well, and we're taking off 4.14. So are we motion to accept the consent agenda as amended?
What are we taking out 4.2, 4.4, and 4.14?
4.2 and 4.4 for discussion per Director Sorkin's request, and 4.14 was put on in error.
Okay, so that's off.
Yep. Motion by Tamaro, support by Yuhan. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. So we have agenda item, or consent agenda item 4.2. Director Sorkin?
4.2 is approval of the July 26th regular meeting minutes, and I don't find them to be complete and correct minutes. As in Roman numeral 2 and 3, Roman numeral 2 is additions and deletions to the agenda. It says none. I attempted to make an addition or a deletion to the agenda, and so did Director Patty, and it was not allowed by the chair. So that is not what actually happened at the meeting. Roman numeral 3, approved the agenda. It was approved by Schilber, seconded by Yuhan. Motion passed 8-1 with Sorkin voting no. I actually moved an amendment to the approval of the agenda. I had a first, there was no second, but the record should reflect that I made a motion to amend the agenda.
Can you submit your proposed changes to Stacy and she can direct them to the rest of the board? I know it's hard for me to consider what you're proposing without having a chance to look at it.
So we will not approve the minutes of this meeting tonight until they're corrected and I have a chance to review the corrections.
Well, and until everybody else has a chance to review your proposed corrections.
And everyone. Okay. So we will not move on approving the agenda for tonight.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
And what was with 4.4?
4.4 is approve the hire of Cassandra Haney for the Positive Community Norms Grant Coordinator effective August 18, 2021. I did request information from the superintendent, a little bit more information about this. There was no additional information in the board packet, and I had some questions about the contract. Will there be a contract? What will the pay be? What will the duration be? What's the job description? And then about the posting, how many applicants were there, and how many were named finalists and what their names were. I think that's very appropriate information for we board members to have and for the public to know. So I would ask those questions now.
On the board minutes, or on the board, excuse me, Director Sorkin, on the board book, it also says that there's 3 applications, 1 declined. Salary is $46,000 a year, in a 5-year position.
Where is that, Murray? I didn't get it in mine.
4.4 on the board book, hit on board book on that 4.4, and that will bring that up.
Okay, and that was where I got a board packet printed out for me, and I didn't get any.
This was on the board book sent.
Well, I get a printed copy.
Yeah, and
It is on the printed copy as well.
I don't know, I was Director Sorkin, and I can't see her, there it is, right there, and I can't get anywhere with that.
I did, right now.
So again, in addition, I did email the superintendent on Friday and asked for those that information. I didn't receive it. Was there a copy of the contract and the job description in there also?
No.
So I'm not the only one that did not receive, or could not find, or was not given that additional information.
Well, what does the board want to do? Do we feel that there's enough information to approve the hire, or do we want to wait until next time?
I move that we postpone the hiring of Cassandra Haney until the next board meeting where we can have more information.
So there's a motion by Director Sorkin to postpone. Is there a support?
Support.
Support by Director Tamero. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Under agenda item 5 is construction, and 5.1 is the presentation of the CM contract amendment with presenter Kraus Anderson.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Gallagher, the Senior Project Manager from Charles Anderson for all the projects in the referendum. We're going to present this direction with the screen here so you can see what we're doing today. As you had stated, thank you again for the time here. We're going to go over a change order for the Kraus Anderson contract, as well as the CD estimate review for North Star Elementary for your approval. And we'll start first of all on the amendment for our contract. So just a couple of questions. Who's received? I guess we have this.
That's for the live stream, audio, not for announced.
Okay. Who has reviewed this up till now? We have worked with the superintendent as well as the advisory team board, and we have sent it over to Spencer Ani as well, and he's had it for a couple of weeks to review. The intent of this is to adjust our contract now that we've had the value management process has been pretty well completed. We've been value managing, if you remember, from the time we approved all the contracts, value managing to get that alignment back into acceptable levels. We've completed that now. We've also done some fundraising. That funding has been put into the contract, as well as some other funding from each of the districts. So we've never amended our contract for that increase in the contract, so we are doing it now at one time. And then why now? That is the reasoning. We have those things pretty well solidified now, so we can do that. And then what's next is each quarter when we give you the quarterly report, and the last quarterly report included all of these costs, by the way, we will reassess. And one of the key things is you raise more fundraising money, then we can put that into the project and we would adjust it that way. So this is strictly the Kraus Anderson portion of the contract, and it's change order or amendment number 1. And we haven't had any changes up till now, so this summarizes everything to date, and it is included in the quarterly report. So Paul, why don't we talk this a little bit?
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Patrick. All right, so should take no more than a couple minutes here. It'll be very brief. You can think of this like an oil change almost as part of routine maintenance here. We could have done this a dozen times up to this point, and there will be a couple amendments still afterwards. Really the one that matters the most is the one at the very, very end of the project, but we like to keep things up to date, especially after some of these more significant resolutions. So we'll just go through the bottom line summary, hit a little bit more context, and then talk about the timing going forward as well. So the contract amendment is composed of 4 primary kind of different budgets that fluctuate throughout the definition of the funding and the total project costs. And as those continue to develop, those 4 buckets of money are listed on this slide here. The first 3 are budget refinements that were looked at way at the very beginning of the projects before almost anything was known, and based off of industry standard percentages, kind of best guesses, best estimates at those point in time for things like general conditions, how many dumpsters, the amount of temporary fencing, the amount of plywood enclosures needed to construct each project. As the projects continue to develop, those quantities become very known. They're very well known on the Laurentian Elementary School project. They're getting to be very well defined on the Rock Ridge High School project, and still estimates for kind of the remaining 2 projects as well. Site services is management time. Again, that's a budget refinement. Same with things like reimbursables. That's something that we would buy or need to get, and then just gets reimbursed one for one there. And then the last one is just the flat 2% fee that's in our contract, and that is based upon the ending total hard costs of the actual construction. And again, as additional funding gets committed, or as value management occurs, or favorable bids occur, that number goes up and that number goes down. We're just kind of memorializing at this point in time, after 18 months or so of not doing that, where we're at with that. And the total amount right now is a positive adjustment of $375,000. All right. So that number is primarily driven, again, by the additional funding that's been committed to this project to date. So if we all remember, we've all kind of been working off of $183 million for a very long time. 178.5 is kind of the amount of the referendum, and then there was $4.5 million of additional board direct funding, $3 million from, at the time, the Eveleth-Gilbert board, and $1.5 million at the time from the Virginia board.
No, the $3 million from the former Eveleth-Gilbert board, that was earmarked specifically for...
Specific for the Laurentian Elementary School project, yep.
But now it's kind of been...
No, it just increases the total referendum contract, that our contract is based off this arrangement. So.
Yeah, my question is basically referring to the spreadsheet where it shows the increase on the high school because of the significant additional $4.5 million in funding.
Yeah, so it's easier to see on your board read-ahead packets, of course, which are a little bit closer up here. But the Laurentian Elementary's column is right here. Its original referendum value is shown there. And then that $3 million from the, at the time, Eveleth-Gilbert board is shown right there. And so, yep, and that stays into that column. Really, the number that matters at the end of the day is the total of all of those blue columns,
sure,
which forms the entire value of the project. So, great question. Does that answer your question, Director Schoberg? Excellent. Okay. So one of the biggest adjustments, though, from all of the master referendum budgeting processes is that jump from $183 million to $190 million there. So it's that added $7 million of bond interest commitments, other school board direct contributions. Patrick mentioned fundraising, commitments from the capital fund, some E-rate rebates, and then some deferred maintenance commitments as well, all upping that total, again, as it's kind of shown here. Each one of the, here's kind of that $7 million right there. And if you look at the breakout, it shows which columns these different additional funding commitments were attributed towards. So basically, bottom line, we're at $190 million now instead of $183 million. Okay, and like we mentioned, the net overall to the good of $300,000 that was presented as the summary of the entire master referendum budget at the last CM quarterly report. All of these adjustments and that $375,000 that we're talking today, those already auto-calculate through different percentages and formulas. So that's already kind of included into that $300,000 to the good. So this isn't making any situation anything any worse or anything like that. That's already reflected in that total, and it's not going to make things not be $300,000 to the good now. All right, and there's just, this is a pure copy paste from our last CM quarterly report. And you could expect to now see one of these contract amendment presentations kind of accompany each future quarterly report as well, as additional fundraising gets committed, as the Laurentian Elementary School approaches completion, as the North Star Elementary School gets bid out. Those are all refinements, lockdowns, tightening the belt on the budget, and we're able to final calculate. And our contract can also go down. It's just whatever the trend of the projects is at the time. So. And so tonight is for consideration our first contract amendment, our next quarterly report, and actually the last time you'd be hearing from me this year would be in October, because our next quarterly report after that would be in January. So you only have to hear me one more time this year, so there should be a round of applause just for that. All right, and then we would do that until all of the referendum projects, all 4 of those columns are 100% complete, and we know the final values. And the last little bit that I wanted to cover that I think I glazed over actually is that every single penny of unspent general conditions dollars gets returned to the district. Every unspent penny of site services money, that gets returned to the district. Every unspent penny of reimbursables, that gets returned to the district. Every unspent penny of contingency, which is not in this contract, but also gets returned to the district. So it's at that end of the projects as well, where a lot of those reconciliatory amendments get made as well, and those funds returns, and kind of look at what else they can get spent on, things like that. So this is really why we called them budget refinements. It's really setting aside the money for what we are seeing and what we're projecting and what we think you are going to need to finish your buildings today based on everything that's known. So I think that kind of wraps up everything that I wanted to say. Patrick, was there anything else that you wanted to add to kind of clean up?
No, just that one of the major things was we had a very good bidding situation on the Evelyn Gilbert Elementary, Laurentian Elementary, and now we've reallocated those funds as well. So this is really a good wrap-up of all that and memorializes where we're at. So.
Okay, and in that case, if any board members would like to ask either myself or Patrick or Pete any questions, otherwise we will turn it back over if it's appropriate for discussion and vote, whatever Madam Chair decides.
I have a few questions. So piggybacking on Matt referring to the $3 million that the former Evelyn Gilbert School District designated for the elementary on the Evelyn side, the Laurentian Elementary. So you're saying we came in $221,000 plus some change to the good on that on this project?
Yeah, that column, I believe, as it currently reflects, just pull up a little graphic for, we may not have one in here. Maybe just shown on the exhibit. But I believe that figure is approximately accurate, that project column is currently reflecting a positive budget alignment.
Okay, so yeah, the net change is a positive of $221,000. But that designated $3 million came from our general fund. Are you saying that this 221 now is going to be applied to the project? Or I believe it should go back into the New Rock Ridge General Fund for other uses because it came out of a general fund for a certain purpose and not just added to the project total dollar expenditures. That's it.
Yep, good question. And do you want me to summarize and restate? Yep.
Okay. So as referendum funds, they stay within the referendum budget. And I'm sorry, can you state your question again?
Well, but the $3 million was not a referendum amount. It came from the former Evelyn Gilbert General Fund to add to the project. So it wasn't referendum. So whatever is unused, I would believe, would go back into the New Rock Ridge General Fund, not for building project purposes. Maybe it could be for curriculum and salaries and other needs of the district instead of just throwing it into the referendum building project fund.
Well, I believe that the board voted to your board that was Evelyn Gilbert Elementary. Your district board voted to put it into the project. So I don't know how you would pull it out of the project now, especially because that board doesn't exist anymore.
Wasn't that if needed though, Matt?
I would have to go back, but my recollection was that that money was the money of last resort, and it likely would not be needed to be used on the project.
And it looks like we do have about $220,000 that was not needed.
But right now, the project's not done. So it could fluctuate up or down. It could become a greater, or it could become a smaller amount. And at that time, then,
I think at some point in time, we need to clarify then where that money should go or shouldn't go, as a board or as maybe a resolution or a legal thing. And then it looks like for the demolition amounts did not change, but for the North Star Elementary on the Virginia side, there's an addition of about $116,000. And so I know Virginia put in, 2.5 million, but I recall that was designated for the high school. And so this extra $116,000 for the Virginia Elementary, the North Star Elementary, would some of that $221,000 that was saved in the Laurentian Elementary be going into extra projects? Evidently, it's an extra project or an add-on to the North Star Elementary.
The North Star Elementary took on funds from deferred maintenance, though, for the existing building portion of that project.
And those are good questions, Polly, but I mean, starting with my take on things, starting with the referendum budgets. I mean, it's a project, we're going to do this thing. At that point, I mean, the budgets always move around. That's just the nature of construction. And they have moved around. We ended up in a little better environment than we anticipated on the Laurentian, and things have changed. As I asked last week, or 2 weeks ago, I'm a little concerned that we'll be able to stick to the budget for the North Star Elementary, but I think you guys are doing a great job in managing that.
So for the Laurentian Elementary, that we were coming up $220,000 to good, are you saying that $200,000, what were general conditions credited back to the project? Do you have like a big portion of it that was something, a big chunk of that, and the $21,000 for management fees? I suppose if the bottom line is smaller, then the fee is smaller, I understand that.
That's correct.
But what would be, you had said that competitive bids may have come out a little bit lower. Is that $200,000 all attributed to lower competitive bids, or what else is not going to happen that we had planned for in the Laurentian Elementary?
A lot of the general conditions is just how we've really watched over the budget for general conditions. Again, general conditions are things like temporary barricades and dumpsters and things like that. Just got a really good management team that's been able to minimize those costs. And instead of waiting till the end of the project to give those back so they could be utilized somewhere else, we wanted to do it now because we're at about that 75% level. So any one big item? No, there isn't one big item.
Then the high school is almost $500,000 additional, $480,500. Can you shed some light on what that big chunk is basically for?
Yeah, we were over budget on that project misaligned for quite some time, and we went through, and as you know, we've come back and presented to you various items that had to be value engineered out, and some were then put back into the project, deemed as being essential to the project, and then additional funding was put in there to align with those. So like the athletic lighting and that type of item.
The athletic lighting was what, about $300,000?
It was closer to
$500,000 to $600,000.
Okay, so that's
one big item.
That's almost a total increase for that lighting for the fields for this addition, okay? Just to clarify.
And that was originally in the budget, and then it came out.
Came out as a value engineer and then went back, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So just, it's a good point, because back when we presented that budget, we said, here's your estimate, here's your budget, there's a misalignment, here's how you can get within budget. We presented those items. Some of those items then were not accepted, and additional funding was put in to cover the ones that you thought were essential. So that brought the contract up.
So will that be coming out of general fund money then? This shortage for the lighting, this 480,000, which is most of what the lighting costs were?
That where the money comes from is up to the district. I'd have to talk to Spencer.
Capital, not general fund.
It's coming from the capital pot. What fund is that? Or what?
It's the capital fund, as you heard in the board meeting several times over the last couple board meetings, it would come out of the capital. That's where you voted it would come out of.
Okay, capital, does that include the long-term facilities maintenance fund?
Yep,
Is
that's
it all-
a subset of capital.
Okay, it's not all of it from LTFM, but it's some of it.
Yeah, that particular one couldn't come out of LTFM.
Right.
It was out of the main capital fund.
Capital fund, okay. And a discussion for another time would be, what will we have to adjust and what will we not be getting now because of that? And that's a budget discussion.
Any other questions
I
for
have some more
Kraus?
questions here. You know, this is a lot of information, a lot of numbers, and I don't see what's wrong with asking questions and clarifications. So my other, on top of your 2% construction fees, don't you also get other reimbursements for other things? I know I had a sheet, I couldn't find it, but, and with the first contract, there was a sheet, and you said this one was already obsolete, that every year, every 6 months, these other fees were going to increase. So that's, I'm asking if that is a different amount of money and a different fund, and what might those numbers be?
Yeah,
in addition?
basically there's 4 different pieces of the KA contract. One is general conditions, which we talked about. Site services, which basically pays for our superintendent and the people in this room. Reimbursable expenses are like pass-through type items, that permits, that type of thing. And then our fee is at 2%. So those are the 4 ways that Kraus gets dollars from the referendum.
I understand that, but there is another sheet that said for copying and for mileage and for your
Director
manager.
Sorkin, how does this directly relate to the construction amendment?
Oh, I think it
I don't think it does,
Relates
and I
to
think
the
that these are
total amount.
questions you could probably ask Mr. Gallagher at another time. Does anyone else on the board have questions for Kraus Anderson?
I think they're very relevant, and
Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the contract amendment number 1?
So moved.
Motion
Support.
by Director Schoberg, support by Director Reardon. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
no,
So there are 7 yeas, 1 nay, and, or no,
Murray took
6.
7-1, and Murray stepped out, so
6, 1, and 1 abstention. All right, agenda item 5.2 is presentation of the North Star Elementary. Welcome.
CD estimate.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Stace.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pete Oppen.
7, 1, and 1.
I'm the Laurentian Elementary currently, and then the future North Star Elementary, and then also associated with the demo projects as well. So today we'll go through the North Star
approved
Elementary CD estimate. So that's our construction document estimate. That means our documents are about 100% complete right now. We're able to do a full estimate on that. So some of the items that we'll talk about is a recap of our estimating process for those of you who are unfamiliar with that and where we're at today. And go through our key questions, our current budget status, the referendum budget summary, and then conclusion at the end, any questions that you might have. So our estimating process, we've gone through the planning and project development. We've gone through the pre-referendum. We're now in the pre-construction for the North Star Elementary. And in that pre-construction, we are in the CD estimate phase. So we've come from the referendum budgeting, our schematic design, our DD, and now our CD, and we'll be asking for approval to move on into the bidding phase. So again, just another visual of where we're at in the schedule. here in August for the CD estimate, and then contractor bidding in January of '22. And for those of you that don't know, the reason why we're bidding in January of '22 is to expedite our mechanical, electrical supply items. They're long lead time items, and we need to get those started in the existing Roosevelt gym in the basement there in March, so that we can have everything up and running before we demolish Roosevelt and start the new elementary school. So, estimate review, our key questions, are the design and budget currently aligned? If not, why is that? And how are we going to get there? And then at the end, I'll ask for approval. Question number 4. So the question number 1, design and budget currently aligned. There is a $1 million misalignment right now. So you can see where we've come from, the SD estimate, the DD estimate, and now our CD with a deviation of about 4.2%. So that $1 million alignment needed out of a $23.5 million budget. So that budget is a little bit different than it was because of what Paul and Pat were just discussing about funds being infused into the referendum, into the North Star. So that's how we got to the $23.5 million construction budget and a $6 million soft cost budget. So a total budget of $29.5 million for the North Star Elementary. All right, just another reiteration here. Our revised budget is $23.5 million. Our current estimate is at $24.5, which is that 4.2% within our target. So this is a breakdown of our estimate, our site costs, building, contingency, general conditions, some deduct alternates, and the deferred maintenance alternates, for a total of the $24.5 million currently. So the next slide, I'm going to go over the alternates a little bit so you guys understand where those are coming in from. So the reason we come up with alternates is to give us the flexibility to manage the budget depending on how bids come in January, whether they come in higher than we anticipated or lower. So we do have some add alternates, and then we do have quite a few deduct alternates to give us that flexibility to stay within budget. So currently in the $24.5 million CD estimate, we have included all of these deduct alternates, but depending on where the bids come in January, if they come in favorably like they did on the Laurentian, we'll be able to keep these items in the project. So this is just another view of the systems of how the building goes together and come up with that same number. So a recap of the questions. Are we within alignment? We do need $1 million alignment required. And if not, why is that? As you know, right now the market conditions are a little up and down, and the material prices have increased quite a bit. Some are starting to come back down, so that's a good trend to see. But COVID is a big factor of that, of why prices are a lot higher. And then obviously with our inflation, because we're starting in 2022, we got to add on that inflation.
I have a problem with that because initially we were supposed to start this later. We moved the construction up at least a year, so we're saving money by doing an earlier construction than what we had originally planned on. That should be a savings, it's not like we waited. We were going to start construction at least a year later. We moved the schedule up by moving the students to the Franklin for a year.
And we did that all before COVID came, and I didn't have that forecasted.
Well, I understand. I understand all that, but don't say it's inflation. The costs have gone down because we moved the time frame up. We haven't moved it back.
We did save 1 year of inflation.
Yes, but you're saying it costs cost us 3%. We saved 3%.
I'll tell you what, bear with them because there's a slide coming here that I think will answer your question. Yes, we saved 3% at the time when we did that. And then COVID happened, and then prices have increased well in excess of 3% at this particular point in time.
That's not surprising at all. And yes,
So you knew COVID was coming.
I didn't know COVID was coming, but I know construction costs have increased dramatically in the last.
Primarily because of COVID.
Yes.
Yes. And
So blame it on that. Don't blame it on inflation because it's not. We've saved money by moving it up from what it was originally planned to do it.
That's correct, and we adjusted that budget accordingly, and now that budget is receiving today's market influences of COVID. Stick with me just a minute, we'll come back to you. Let them go through the rest.
All right, at least change your presentation
Okay.
request.
Okay.
If not, what we need to do, as I mentioned in the previous slide, manage those alternates for flexibility, whether we add, delete, change, do some value management throughout the finalization here of the design process, and then possibly reallocate owner soft costs if absolutely needed. So, there's a lot of information on this slide. And I'd like to go through it step by step with you to make sure everyone understands, because there's lots of numbers here and it might get a little confusing. So what we've done, speaking of inflation, is we ran a scenario to show a comparison to hard costs that we actually have in hand right now with the Laurentian Elementary, and do an inflation scenario to see where this new project should come out in the future, right? If there was no COVID and all that fun stuff. So we have our current state of each project. So the Laurentian Elementary, like I said, that's just about to wrap up here by the end of the year. We have our total hard costs. We got a cost per square foot. And then the North Star Elementary, we're at our CD estimate, that's at 24.5 million, and our cost per square foot. There is the
Say those costs because they can't necessarily.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So the Laurentian is $294 a square foot, and the North Star currently in our CD estimate is $356 a square foot.
So that, just to interrupt this.
Yep.
Quite a big difference.
About 18%.
Right. And given that, now the question is the market going to return to that plus 3% inflation? Is it going to go there? Or is it going to be something in between, or where's it going to go? Because, I'm going to steal a little bit of Pete's thunder. Before we cry wolf and say we're $1 million over and let's cut yet another $1 million out of the design that the design team has come up with by talking to your user groups, your educators out there that you all work with day in and day out with the administrator. Before we do that, we want to make darn sure, are we overreacting? Are we cutting too soon? Or should we analyze this and see where do we think this is going to be in January, February when we bid, and then base it off of that. So keep that in the back of your mind as he leads through the rest of this, because that's important. What I don't want to do is cut another $1 million out of this, and then we get to February and you're $2 million under. And you go, why did you cut all this? I mean, why did we go through this whole process and not have a facility that we said we needed for education? So that's why we're comparing it to the Evelyn Gilbert Elementary and making a prediction based on that. Okay, go ahead, Pete.
Thanks, Pat, for clearing that up. So that was the current state. Now our inflation scenario, and again, it is just a scenario. We're using a 6% inflation per year for 2 years. So that's 12%. So we're already doubling the inflation in this scenario. So with the Laurentian Elementary, that dollar per square foot, adding that 12% inflation adds you another $35 a square foot for a total of $329 per square foot. Now, if you compare that to the current CD estimate of North Star at $356, that's a $27 per square foot difference. And if you put that into a dollar amount per the square foot of the North Star Elementary School, is about $1.8 million above and beyond conservative of a conservative inflation scenario. I used the word conservative a lot, didn't I? So our normal inflation is 3% per year. So we've doubled that and went 6% a year to come up with a dollar per square foot of where we probably should be, right, for the project. Well, we are above and beyond that in our CD estimate to make sure that we're covered for this volatile market because of COVID and all that stuff. So if we take that $1.8 million difference from the current CD estimate of 24.5, that puts us at 22.6 million. So we're calling that the post-inflated market adjusted estimate. So that brings us down to a normal inflation from a couple of years instead of having COVID be a part of the factor, right? So if you compare that number to our current budget that we're allowed, it does put us under budget about $800,000. So I threw a lot of numbers at you. So wrap this up. If we do our inflation scenario, it should be about $329 a square foot. Our CD estimate is $356 a square foot. And we have to be $340 a square foot or less to stay within budget. So with that, we believe that a $1 million required alignment is feasible and is reachable when it comes to bid time in January. Now, is there any questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
So just very simply, for my simple mind and just to make it clear, what's the 1 million basically attributed to that we're over budget, out of alignment?
We really feel that it's the influence of the current market post-COVID. That's really what all of that says up there is, okay, after we do the estimate, and we got pricing from the market and from contractors to do our estimate, that's how we make sure that we're in alignment with the current market. We feel that by January is when we're going to start bidding, and then we'll have the bidding completed in February. We feel that $1 million is in that influence of post-COVID.
And is that just from the plan that we already have for whatever's going into that building, and that it's not, is there anything that's been added to that project that's in this number, or are you saying it's all inflationary and material costs and inflation and other things?
The second thing you said.
It's all inflation.
And that's what we're trying to show by that, because, I mean, 6% per year is pretty high inflation, and we took it times 2 years. And then we still are
Added on top of that.
On top of that, and you've still got how much left? Bottom line there again is 837.
Yeah.
Still remaining.
So the dollars per square foot for the Laurentian and the North Star, the $294 for the Laurentian and the $356 for the North Star.
Yes.
Square footage should be square footage. Are you saying that difference is attributed to the inflation too, and that number is the $1 million number?
A large percentage of that is due, I mean, it's a different project, right? It's in downtown Virginia versus out in the woods, and it's not rock. And so there's a lot of influences, but a large portion of it, at least $1 million of it, we do feel is due to the COVID market, post-COVID.
And then the other part of it is location, materials? Is it
Just
materials?
different design and different area.
Is it
Yeah.
partially attributed to different materials used too?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah, because that's all part of that. Because that's a brick building.
Brick versus Corten.
That is correct.
And then there's terrazzo versus maybe vinyl or linoleum, right? Or is that the high school?
Terrazzo was an alternate.
Yep, terrazzo is an alternate on this project, similar to what we did over at Laurentian, and we were able to accept that because the bids came in favorably. And then in this school, the base will be a resin floor instead of a rubber. It'll be a resin, and then an add alternate for the terrazzo.
The same with the Laurentian and the North Star? The resin?
Yeah, in Laurentian, when we bid Laurentian, Evelyn Gilbert, we bid it as a resinous floor, and then we had an add alternate for terrazzo. And when the bid results came in well, the advisory team said, let's do that let's do that terrazzo. So then we were able to put that into that project. We're doing a similar thing on this project.
Okay. And just one more question. At a previous meeting, did you say, unless I heard you wrongly, did you say that brick was less expensive than Corten as exterior material?
When you say Corten, you mean metal panel?
Yes, the rusty metal panels that will go on now.
Yeah, so the high school has the rusty metal panels.
Okay.
The Evelyn Gilbert Elementary or Laurentian has painted pre-finished panels. So they're two different types of panels. But the brick does become pretty comparable in price to those metal panels.
Okay. It's not less expensive, but it's comparable?
Yeah. 'Cause
Okay.
what you pay in material on brick, you pay more out in the layers and the labor to apply those metal panels.
All right, just one more comment. If it were comparable, in my estimation, maybe we should have gone with brick too. So that's all I have.
Any other questions for Klaus? Right, does anyone want to make a motion regarding the contract amendment number 2? Or no, never mind. Sorry, approval of the North Star Elementary CD estimate.
I'll support. Oh,
I'm going to give, I think it was Director Lotiger for support and Director Yuhan for the motion. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-2. Agenda item number 6 under reports. 6.1 is a thank you to Kimmy Christensen from the Freeze 32 Degrees and all of the local businesses and families that helped to make the Parkview Stuff the Bus a huge success. They were able to bring in lots of supplies to help students who are in need. 6.2 is the superintendent's report. Dr. Schmidt.
Thank you, members of the school board, and I'll stand up here because I know you can swivel around. Topic for tonight is COVID. Everybody's interested in what are we going to do for COVID. So my report tonight, and I'll go over this, some things that we could do. Now, last year, you directed me to make the COVID decisions, and we met with the COVID team, and that kind of guided us throughout the school year. Now, this year, you haven't said that, so what I'm going to show you tonight and talk about is this is what we're thinking, and then I'm looking for feedback from you. You like this, you don't like it, any specific changes, alterations you would like to do, then I'll rework the letter, and then if the timing works out, I'd like to send this out to families at the end of this week sometime, and also to staff at the end of this week. So I'm here to get your input on what do you think. So the situation is very different. We do not have, oh, thank you. Put my glasses on so I'm not holding on to two things. So the situation is different because we don't have MDE, we don't have the governor making COVID mandates, and so what they have told us is here's what we're recommending, here's what the CDC is recommending, but on the local level you get to make the decisions. So here we are. So the couple things I want to go over, and then when I'm done, I'll answer any question you want. I'm looking for feedback from the board as far as what do you think. We are preparing for 100% in-person learning. We are not setting up the system to do online learning by grade levels or anything like that, like we did last year. Last year we had about 20% of all of our kids had chose the online option. So this year, that's also very similar to what has happening around us. There is no online option for kids. So we're planning for 100% in-person schooling, and that is what the vast majority of parents have told us they want us to do. Now, before I start the plan, I also had this caveat that if circumstances change, if we have a huge increase in COVID rates, we don't know what is going to happen from MDE, we don't know what's going to come out of the Minnesota Department of Health, so all of this is susceptible to change based upon current conditions right in the immediate area. So just kind of keep that in mind. So our first recommendation is that we are recommending that all students 12 and over, including staff, follow the CDC guidelines for vaccinations and get a vaccination. The science is very strong that that works. However, this is a recommendation that we are making to our parents and to our staff members. The second thing is that students and staff will not be required to wear masks. We are recommending that they wear masks, especially if they are unvaccinated or if they have another underlying health condition which would cause them to wear a mask. So under those circumstances...
We need to have order for our board meeting, please. It's a board meeting. In America.
Under those circumstances, we want the parents to talk to their local family doctor and to make those specific health suggestions with their local doctor level. In addition to this...
Excuse me, let Dr. Schmidt get through his report. This is unorderly.
In addition, this is coming from the federal government. If kids are wearing the bus...
This is very difficult. Excuse me. It's difficult for the people here on the board to listen to what Dr. Schmidt is saying. It is not a time for you to comment.
Something to say about it. You need to listen to the parents.
We can recess if you can't be orderly.
We need our turn to speak also. That's all we're saying. Don't censor us. We will not be censored. We pay your salary. Don't forget.
In addition, on the school bus, this is a federal requirement, kids will need to wear a mask on the school bus, as the adults will also need to wear a mask on the school bus. In addition to that, if anyone tests positive for COVID, we will do just like what we did last year. They will need to go into quarantine, so if we have staff or students who do test positive for COVID, we will send them home for quarantine.
Why don't they just stay there?
In addition to this, if someone does show symptoms of COVID, and especially if they have had close contact with someone who does have COVID, we will ask them, especially if they have symptoms, we will ask them to go home. We'll talk to the parents. We'll talk to the parents about them, and they will be required to quarantine. However, if the child or the staff member gets a PCN test and it comes back negative, or they have a note from a physician saying it's something else, that they don't have COVID, then they can certainly come back to school, and we will honor those requests from the physicians. We will also do all the contact tracing, which we will need to do to make sure that students who come in contact with a confirmed case of COVID, we will do the normal contact tracing. This is what we did last year, and we will let the parents know that their child may have had close contact with someone who has COVID. However, that will be a parent decision as far as whether that child attends school or does not attend school. We'll work with the parents on that case. We will recommend, this will be a parent decision, that we will recommend that they do wear the mask if they have had close contact with someone who does have a confirmed case. In all cases, we will try to keep the quarantine period to a minimum, so that it's a minimum time that we're legally required to, as recommended by the Minnesota Department of Health and the Minnesota Department of Education. We will do that. In addition to that, we will recommend also to parents, if they are able, to drive their child to school, or if the kid can drive themselves, that they should drive themselves to school and also get a buddy system going so they can perhaps ride with someone else. The whole purpose of this is to put a fewer bodies on the school bus. We feel that will help. In addition to that, we will also continue to offer hand sanitizers in key locations throughout the school. We will also space out students as much as possible, and we will also regularly clean the high-touch areas. So that is, in general, what we're thinking about with their kids and staff for the start of the school year. Now I'll stop, and then I'll ask members of the school board if you have any questions or things you would like me to change, word differently.
Do you ever listen to
Questions from the school board.
Do you ever listen to parents?
Are there any questions from the board members? Ma'am, if you can't contain yourself, you will have to be removed.
I will gladly remove myself. After I talk.
Are there any questions from, there is a time and place for input.
Give us a time.
It's per board policy. This is not the way. Are there any questions from the board for Dr. Schmidt? Any comments? Is that a threat, sir? Is that a threat, sir? Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute recess, and you guys can figure out how to calm down, and then we'll be back to finish the meeting of the board. Schmidt. Does the board have any questions for Dr. Schmidt?
I wanted some input, and my input is, I agree with 100% in person, but I don't agree with recommending that 12-year-olds get vaccinations. I would not recommend that specifically, and I don't think we as a board should recommend that, to get the vaccines.
It's just a recommendation. I'm not
I just
telling any parents they have to do it.
I know, I don't want to be on the side to recommend it, though, so that's my feeling. And as far as wearing masks...
Mic isn't for in here, it's just for the YouTube.
Spend enough of our money by a PA system.
And the second bullet about won't be required to wear a mask, but they will be strongly recommended that students and staff wear masks. I disagree with that, and I would not support that. And no to having, I would not support recommending wearing a mask on a bus. I believe that should be up to parents and students.
It's federal.
And the other bullets, I would have to study them and really understand what they mean about testing and so forth. Oh, the one about the parents driving their children to school, I'm not sure that parents should not be reimbursed if they do that, for driving their own children to school, instead of having them bused. And that's all I have. I will study the other bullets.
Any other board members have anything for Dr. Schmidt? Great, thank you.
Thank you, members of the board.
Agenda item 7, our administration item, 7.1 is consider INAC as the 2021-22 Food Service Management Company.
So moved.
Motion by Director Reardon. Support by Director Lotiger. Any discussion?
Let's just hope that in 2 years, when our high school opens, that we will no longer be needing of these services. Yeah, but okay, but we will be able to cook our own food in our culinary kitchen.
I think that's the goal and the hope of
Okay.
everybody.
Hey, Madam Chair, I made the motion. Best to correct that now.
Did I not have, I thought I had
You said Reardon, that's
Oh,
fine.
sorry.
I mean, we're both good looking, I can see that.
I might recommend masks for this board. And that was second by Director Lotiger.
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 7.2 is consider 2021-22 meal prices. Breakfast and lunch will again be free for students under the federal Seamless program. To keep up with inflation, it's important to raise the meal prices by 10 cents, so in future years we won't have to increase it all at once. Adult meals, a la carte, and any second meals that students would still need to be purchased.
I'll move.
Motion by Director Addy,
Support.
support by Anderson. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. 7.3, consider approval of the 2021-22 Rock Ridge Grades 7 through 12 Student Handbook.
I would move for approval.
Support.
Motion by Director Schoberg and support by Director Anderson. Any discussion?
There was some conversation in the last board meeting about concerns about penalties being too stiff and severe. Did that activities committee?
We met, it's all been changed.
Yeah, I just would like you to point out in the big document what those changes, recommended changes are.
There was one change that from the first offense went from 3 to 2.
And that's games?
Yes. Yes.
And that was
Games
the-
or weeks, whatever is more stringent.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's in line with the MSHL.
And that's, again,
Guidelines.
like,
Okay, and that
Yeah,
was,
it said-
okay. That was the only change for that
Right.
part of it. And then I see on page 13, this needs further focus groups this year about, is it grade point average? Would that be about weighted grades?
pardon me?
The weighted grades on page 13, is that, it says further focus group discussion this year? Is that about weighted grades and about the grading? The top 10% of the senior class says it's going to have to be looked at again?
I'm sure they're going to have to.
Because I think that students and parents would like to know early on what it's going to end up being. Are we having valedictorian and salutatorian in this district? Is that in here?
We haven't. We haven't.
In Virginia, we have.
In Virginia.
And this says it'll be recognized in Virginia and not Evelyn until, and that's one of the things that need refinement going forward.
Well, and that's, well, that's my question. We're one district now. That should, I think, should be hashed out and should be consistent across, even though we still have different high schools.
I would be supportive of a valedictorian, salutatorian as well. I mean, just to be consistent.
And I don't know, I mean, it's a big document. I didn't have time to really go through it page by page, but are there any inconsistencies between the two sites in here?
Well, this was proposed the last meeting, but we tabled it so that we could talk about just that one specific issue of the penalties. So there's been time for everyone to review.
No, there hasn't. The whole document is game for discussion, and we did not even have an in-depth discussion about it. I'm just seeing some of these things and bringing them
There's
up.
a motion to approve it, and there's support. All those in favor?
I'm still in the discussion period.
Aye.
I'm still in the discussion period.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carries 8-1. 7.4 is to consider approval of the resolution of the Board of County Commissioners for the distribution of American Recovery Act funds, St. Louis County Student Reengagement Initiative, and this will be a roll call vote. Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
I'll move on that.
Motion by Addy with support by Director Lotiger. Any discussion?
Because she's not following it.
I will ask that everyone remain quiet, please. Is there any discussion on this? We'll do a roll call vote. Director Reardon?
Yes.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Schoberg?
Yes.
Director Addy?
Yes.
Director Lotiger?
Yes.
Director Sorkin?
Yes.
Director Tamero?
Yes.
Director Yuhan?
Yes.
And Director Sundquist is a yes. Motion passes unanimously. 7.5 is consider approval of PSEO contract between Rockridge Public Schools and Mesabi Range College effective August 15th, 2021 through June 15th, 2022.
So moved, Reardon.
Support.
Motion by Reardon, support by Yuhan. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 8 is unfinished business.
If no one else has any, I do have a few.
Okay.
Let's see. At a previous meeting in May and subsequent to, there has been discussion about an equity coordinator, and I've asked for this to be put on the agenda to be given an update on it, and it still seems to be an outstanding topic. Also, I think that should be part of a curriculum committee and a curriculum review cycle with statutory input from the public. So I believe that's still outstanding about the equity coordinator when our school is going to be starting pretty soon. Then I think we still have an outstanding unfinished business. We had a purchase offer for the manual arts building that the school board did not even consider, and it was not allowed to be put on the agenda. I think that's unfinished business. And we postponed the demo bid of the manual arts building. I was just wondering what the status of that is and what the status of the Historic Society, the Preservation Office process. I was interested in where that is at this point in time. I mentioned at the last meeting that our board needs to revisit our meeting notices and remote access now that the pandemic is over and the governor no longer has his emergency powers. And so how we operate business, not business, but meetings remotely through Zoom and or through other interactive television. And the Department of Administration Data Practices Office has given some guidance. They've put out some materials and they've got some workshops. And I think we need to visit that. And we also talked about having a discussion of what our new consolidated district needs to do with the former Evelyn Rec Commission. which is no longer just Evelyn Gilbert. And we had some funding for that. I don't know how it's funded now. We had membership. We have to revisit that whole relationship with them. And I'd like to see these things put on the agenda or put into committees to at least discuss. I think it's a business the board needs to do.
I agree with you on that one, Polly. I think it's,
Was that on the rec committee one?
yep.
Was that a discussion at the activities committee?
Not at the last one. We had that discussion at the activities committee probably about a year ago. And
Nothing really.
I think Polly brought it up when we were informed that Mark Forty had
And that was just at the
resigned.
last meeting, wasn't it? And then I think the activities committee said that they would address it the next time you met.
That was on the agenda on last Monday, so maybe the next one
we do need to
take a look at that.
Yes.
I agree.
To that one.
I agree. We need to start talking about that.
All right, that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair,
No,
would you please, can we get people to please address Polly's questions, because she's representing us.
right. And she brought up unfinished business, and it's noted.
But no questions were answered, though.
So agenda item 10 and 11 was to close a session for preliminary considerations of allegations against an individual who is subject to the board's authority pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 2B. And Ms. Sorkin, you have requested that that not go into closed session?
Yes, under that subdivision, 13D05 subdivision 2B says a meeting must also be open at the request of the individual who is the subject of the meeting, and I'm so requesting.
All right, so we will not go into closed session. At this time, the board is to consider a resolution censuring a school board member, and I will read this. Whereas Polly Ann Sorkin is a member of the School Board of Rock Ridge Public Schools, Independent School District 2909. Whereas Ms. Sorkin has failed to respect and follow the district's policies, including the district's rules of orders at board meetings. Whereas Ms. Sorkin has failed to respect data privacy laws while acting in her capacity as a board member. Whereas Ms. Sorkin has failed to carry out the district's mission and has actively undermined the district's mission by refusing to work with the board's negotiation committee on a contract, undercutting the district's mission on social media and more. Whereas the board has determined that Ms. Sorkin's failure to follow the district's mission, policies, and her inappropriate disclosures of information provide a legitimate basis to censure her. Now therefore be it resolved by the board as follows. The board censures Ms. Sorkin for the following reasons. A, Ms. Sorkin has violated district policy and has failed to take direction from the board chair. District Policy 203.1 outlines the rules of order for meetings and provides the board chair can give direction to other board members. Ms. Sorkin has been unwilling to accept direction from the board chair, Stacy Sundquist, in board meetings. Ms. Sorkin tends to waste meeting time with questions and non-tangential comments. For example, Ms. Sorkin consistently brings up older topics the board has already discussed and acted upon. B, Ms. Sorkin has failed to respect data privacy laws, District Policy 205, open and closed meetings, and District Policy 406, public and private personnel data. She revealed private data at a general board meeting, including private data on personal issues, which was previously discussed in closed session. This conduct violates district policy and data privacy under the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, which all public officials must follow. C, under District Policy 201, board members are responsible for the care, management, and control over district schools, and they must, quote, carry out the mission of the school district with diligence, prudence, and dedication, end quote. Ms. Sorkin has at times acted against the mission of the district. For example, she has been unwilling to accept the district's legal counsel's advice and has failed to support board actions after action has been taken in board meetings. She has undermined board committees. For example, she was removed from the negotiation committee for refusing to sit down with the committee and discuss a new contract. Ms. Sorkin has also published misleading and inaccurate social media posts which contradict official board actions and discussions. 2, Ms. Sorkin has been advised of many of these concerns. The above described conduct demonstrates that Ms. Sorkin abdicated her responsibilities as a member of the board in favor of her personal interests. 3, the board hereby removes Ms. Sorkin from any and all school board committee assignments until such time as the board decides that Ms. Sorkin may again be assigned to committees. At this time, I would entertain a motion and support.
Ms. Sorkin speaks for the parents, is what it sounds like.
Is there a motion?
She won't follow.
Is there a motion?
That's what's been going
Motion
on
by
here.
Reardon, is there support?
She has the parent support.
Support by Anderson. Any discussion?
I have questions and comments to make. First of all, I deny each and every allegation, and I believe that I am entitled to legal representation. We even have a policy and a statute about school districts indemnifying and providing legal support to teachers, other employees, volunteers, and board members, as long as I was accused of this as somebody in the school district that you have control over. And that if I'm operating in my capacity as a board member, I believe, it's my opinion, and I will get more legal advice on this, that an attorney should be provided to me by the school district. That's in our policy and that's in statute. So I would like to address some specifics of this resolution for censure. Number 1. On Policy 201, you quote Policy 201, failure to take direction from the board chair, and that the board can give direction to other board members, that I was unwilling to accept direction from the board chair, and I tend to waste meeting time with questions and non-tangential, whatever that word is, comments. I consistently bring up older topics the board has already discussed and acted upon. I would like to have specifics of specific numbers of that policy that I have here, and for example, if it's Roman numeral 1, number 2, 3, or 4, I would like to be afforded that specifics of what numbers and what Roman numerals of these policies, all of them, that you can circle them or whatever, that you think that I have violated. And I would like for all of these specifics of what you mean by dates, meetings, agendas, and what I actually said or didn't say. So every one of these allegations, I would like specifics, and not just things that I tend to waste time. I would like to know when I wasted time. And number B, I failed to respect data privacy in Policy 205 and 406. I revealed private data at a general board meeting. What private data and which parts of those two policies, which specific parts are you referring to that I broke? C, under Policy 20, at times I acted against the mission of the district. Well, I don't know, you did not say what the mission of the district is, and how I acted against it. I mean, these are allegations, and these are they're all subjective. There's no documentation. I'm just asking for proof and documentation of all of these allegations. I was unwilling to accept the district's legal counsel's advice and failed to support the board action after action has been taken in board meeting. Well, if that's a reason to be censured because I disagree with an opinion of an attorney, I think there's still freedom of thought and freedom of speech and freedom of everything in this country. I think to try and witch hunt somebody who has an opinion and might have a strong opinion, but an opinion nonetheless, I think that's very constitutional, even if people don't like what my opinion is. I refuse to sit down with a committee to discuss a new contract. That wasn't a refusal. I don't have to explain here, but I would like specifics on that because there's always the other side of the story. I published misleading and inaccurate social media posts. I would like to know which ones they were and how they were misleading and inaccurate, because misleading and inaccurate can be very subjective things. And I contradicted official board action and discussions. Please document specifically what you are speaking about. Number 2, I had been advised of many of these concerns. Please document when and where and how you advised me of these concerns. What concerns? All of the concerns? I've abdicated my responsibility as a member of the board. To the contrary, I think I've been a very cognizant, very thoughtful, very researching, very dedicated board member to students and parents in the district and our communities. And what else? I don't know, it sounds like on number 1, I don't know, Stacy, did you write that? It sounds like you wrote number 1 about me unwilling to listen to the board chair. I would ask you that, but then I would like to know who generated this, who started this, who precipitated this, and who is the person that precipitated this. Go ahead. And I'm just keeping those questions going because we also have a complaint policy in the district, and I don't know that a complaint policy has been filed. If it was a verbal complaint, was it a written complaint? Do I not have the right to have a copy of this complaint that generated this censure? And so there are very, very many unanswered questions. I think I've been very unfairly treated. That's all I have to say. And I will be getting some legal counsel. It's not a threat, Murray. You've accused me of threatening you before. It's just a statement in a different meeting. And so I'll have to, because I've been wrongly accused of all these things.
Yeah. Whose name is behind it?
At this point, I would take a roll call vote. Director Reardon?
Yes.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Schober?
Yes.
Director Addy?
Yes.
Director Lotiger?
Yes.
Director Tomero?
Yes.
Director Yuhan?
Yes.
Director Sorkin?
No.
And Director Sundquist is yes. Motion passes 8-1.
Next.
Because she won't conform.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.